We are at the Realm Rumble right now with Yuki and Elly, and both of you brought a really interesting Boltyn deck. No one was really talking about this deck before the event. How did both of you do?
I top-8'd the 10K. I went 6-2 in CC.
And I top-8'd the Invitational. I went X4 in CC.
Sick. Let's talk about the deck. I was wondering if this was going to be an interesting pick after Icelander left, and sounds like it was. How many blues were you guys on?
0. And yeah, Icelander was the biggest reason to not play Boltyn, and as soon as she was gone, Elly was very excited because she's been working on the deck for quite some time.
Yeah, I sat on this list for a solid, 9 months. I think I started messing around with it in, PQ3 after qualifying, just what's a fun thing to build? And it's just kind of been iterated from there, and it was mostly just yeah, I think a good Icelander should literally never lose to Boltyn, so there was just no point in bringing the deck for...
Can't beat one Frosty Boy?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, it really, really hurts the deck, especially with all the Duskull Dawn cards wanting you to run a bunch of yellows. It's hard to fit good reds to play, yellows that you want to charge, and then also blues.
The ideal deck just wants 0 blues.
Mm-hmm. And what was the cost curve of the deck typically trying to look like when you were playing?
You're often playing pitchless, or you kind of pay you'll sometimes pitch a yellow to play a Take Flight or a V, and sometimes you can dump it into an Iron Song or a Valiant Thrust to spend the other resource. So it's either yellow pitch or pitchless.
So just really efficient turns essentially?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you kind of are making up some of what you give up with your charging by not having to pitch too much and just play it really lean and go very well.
Yeah, because that's always something everyone memes on with Boltyn of oh, you got 2 card 3s, but it seems like you guys have more than made up for that value in this list. I guess let's go into some of the card choices and everything, and we can talk about how those turns look like and where we get that value.
Yeah.
Do you want to start with equipment?
That's probably reasonable.
Yeah,
that's reasonable.
I think
what kind of deck profile doesn't start with lands or equipment? What are you doing here?
That's true. I think there's just a lot of equipment in this list. I think maybe as meta calls go, you could probably just trim a little bit. The default kind of I'm running this into 80% of my matchups is good old Raiden. This is how you get back the value from burning a card every turn into your soul. Warband of Bologna. This hat is frankly kind of ridiculous. It does a lot for you. It's 3 life if you need it to be. It's often 2 life, pay 2 mana, unbrick your hand, filter a card.
Yeah, it's a lot of consistency since you can pay 2 to make anything a charge, so you can start with a Raiden swing, charge a yellow, draw a card, and then you're kind of off to the races and you have go again, whereas before if you have a 0 for 3, they can just no blocks it and you don't get a turn, whereas starting with a Raiden, you can always get the go again.
It also lets you get away with a pretty considerably lower density of chargers, which kind of lets you only play the good ones, so you get to cut some real garbage cards like Express Lightning. Iron Song Versus. This card is really good at letting you convert an extra floating mana, and also if you use Tunic, on cooldown, pretty much, just if you don't have something to cast your Tunic in on, this is a really good way to use that mana to kind of ship some value to your next turn by closing it on Raiden.
I will say the Iron Song was really annoying to play against. Every time that happened, it's it's just giving you that free courage a lot of the times, or demanding cards out of me, and now it's giving you that guaranteed starter for next round where I can't really play around. That doesn't matter what I do, you're getting that buff and getting that go again.
Yeah, absolutely. And Snapdragon Scalers. I feel like it's kind of hard to say anything interesting about these boots.
They're good.
They give things go again.
Lets you cheat on soul, lets you not have brick turns where they just don't interact with you.
That is pretty huge, yeah. It's it keeps people from just between this and this, you often just find yourself in a situation where it's very hard for your opponent to just ignore you and hit you.
So you have more equipment. Is this basically what you're trying to run in most matchups?
Yeah, absolutely. Raiden makes you more efficient, and then all this stuff just plays nicely with your sword.
Yeah, it's kind of by default a Raiden deck list, but we do have some other sideboard equipments.
Yeah.
You want to go through those?
Yes. I'll start with the proverbial elephant in the room, the Sabers package. Where are you? Centauri Sabers. It's the 4 combo pieces. I think the big thing about Raiden versus Sabers is that while the main contents of your deck tends to be dictated by Raiden. It's pretty easy to kind of jam like a 4-card sideboard situation in and just have a couple matchups that are very, very difficult for you to lose.
Yeah.
So like before, everyone was pretty much sabers. What's the decision making and reasoning for being mostly Duskblade with like a side package of this? Like why would you go for Duskblade instead? And also, when are you trying to be this instead?
The big thing with Raiden is that a huge part of why I think people misevaluate what charge does and how charge works is like the common conception is charging is IPing yourself. You have 3 intellect, and that's just how the hero works. Charging, when you have Raiden in your deck, is really kind of converting the worst card in your hand into 3 to 5 value, depending on whether you can make your opponent block or not. At minimum, you're getting a Raiden swing out of it, so if you have like Beaming Bravado, charge a card, go again, swing Raiden, you at the least have a 2-card 7 that's pretty annoying to block, and that's just lets you get very far ahead when your deck just blocks 3 all the time. The Sabers combo in particular is really good into matchups where they're just so considerably faster than you, or they're just like it's really miserable to not block them. Like you can't really expect yourself to outrace a Katsu when you're not giving them like 3 to 4 cards every single turn until you try to take your pivot.
So you're not like trying to play this into like the defensive decks where you're just like, oh, you're just trying to block me out, I'm just going to combo you instead. It's the other way around.
Yeah, there's more than enough ways to go over with Raiden. You can set up some pretty big turns with Lumina. We can start talking about when we get into the deck, but there's just a lot of things you can do if you're given space. So you don't need it to go over, and against a lot of like the disruptive decks or the Dromais, you don't really want to be giving them a ton of space to just kind of mess with you. But into a deck like Katsu, which so much of his value is in his on-hits, if you sit back and block, it's just much more kind of controlled and safe to play the Sabers combo.
Okay, makes sense. And then we got a couple other equipment slots.
The last few things are Soulbond Resolve. I think this card has a lot of pretty interesting applications. At the moment, it's mostly just for Azalea, being worth 5 block, and the biggest thing is like letting you, if you're under, like a riddle for 14 that you probably can't block out, this card lets you kind of save some life, convert cards to your soul that you would otherwise be discarding to Seek and Destroy or unable to Arsenal, as you only get 1 game action.
It also stops Blood Rot. If you charge on your turn, the prevention is still active on your turn and will prevent 1 damage from the Blood Rot, so you get quite a bit of value out of the Soul Bond just sort of
existing.
For having it there.
And these are cards for Pheano. Halo of Illumination and No Rune Gloves. I think the quote-unquote ideal way to fight Pheano in Boltyn is like hold up some Spell Void and maybe a card for AB and just like try to Sabers them to death, like Courage, Snaps, AB1, Halo. Works pretty well.
Yeah, Pheano was like the other big story. Like Boltyn and Pheano felt like the 2 big stories from this event. So
Yeah.
definitely needed to respect it. Everyone that like, oh, Icelander's gonna take out my stuff, big punish.
Yeah, we brought in the Soul Bond and the Null Rune for the Invitational, and that's what I was on, and I lost to 2 Pheanos. I was like, yeah, probably need a little bit more. Felt like we really needed the Halo. I was like kind of considering it, but we didn't find room for it, and ultimately decided to put it in. In the 20K, I was also running Crown of Providence in this slot, and that's for Bravo. Your Bravo matchup's pretty good with Raiden. He just can't really turn off Boltyn's hero ability that easily. And you tend to be able to go over him and outvalue him. But Crown of Providence stops you from getting CNC pummeled. It's like how Icelander used to run it just to kind of get out of that CNC pummel situation. Exact same thing here. You can just go, no, I don't want to deal with this. I'll just give you Crown of Providence and check my hand.
Makes sense. So that's it for equipment. What do you want to talk about next?
Let's talk about the Chargers. I feel like this is a good
Like as a
good
team
start.
or the card?
I'm not gonna get into football politics.
So
I don't want people to kill me.
we have a bunch of 0-cost Chargers. Engulfing Light goes to Soul. Light the Way, charge a yellow on hit, gets go again. We have 6 bolts.
My favorite.
These are essentially snatches. And we have 5 Beaming Bravados, red and yellows. Beaming Bravado is great because if you charge a yellow, it gets +1, and then you can give it go again. So kind of a lot of these other ones, if they choose not to interact, you need a way to give it you need a courage, you need a snaps, you need something to get it going. But these are just always on so long as you have a yellow, and they're just really good.
Makes it easier to convert your hand.
So it's like 0 cost take flights in the deck, essentially, letting you like conserve your soul for more important things.
Yeah, you do still have to spend your soul on it, but it's just nice that you can always.
Oh,
get
true,
it
true,
going
true.
again.
Yeah, it still costs. It's
So
like
I was thinking this one. This
Yeah,
one.
this one is.
Yeah.
this card is particularly sweet against Dromai, where you can just kind of like, ping
Put
off a
into
dragon and then
And some
keep
decks,
going.
some decks really can't block this card. Like
Yeah.
Phi is just like okay.
Yeah, a lot of stuff like this just ends up being functionally unblockable against Phi, especially like the way.
So onto the one cost characters.
the one costs. We have Take Flight red
Speak of the devil.
and Take Flight yellow. I feel like this card is pretty obvious. Particularly the yellow is a little bit like not really where you want to be on rate, but it's a perfectly fine 2-card play off of Tunic.
Is it like a role filler essentially for the deck? You just kind of need some number of that effect.
Yeah.
It's glue and it's better than a lot of the others. You don't want to play Cross the Line.
It being yellow is big because yellows are resource cards. They throw the 2 costs. You can pitch a yellow to take flight and activate Iron Song versus. There's a lot of ways to kind of use the 2 resources. So it doubling as a pitch card is really nice, and then when it lines up with Tunic, it's pretty good.
And the best card in the deck, well, close to, via the Vanguard. You're obviously looking to generally play this card off of Tunic, but it has a lot of turn cycles where, as mentioned, Iron Song versus can kind of help you out because there might be a turn where all you really want to pitch for is V of the Vanguard, and you can like ship that extra mana into Iron Song versus, go like V, charge a card, and then follow with a Raiden that's already a break point that generates a courage and kind of makes your next attack more threatening, whether you're continuing on the turn or not.
Yeah, and V pairs really nicely with all the 0 costs in the deck. There's so many on hits with the bolts. There's snatches in the sideboards. There's these engulfing lights. So often you can charge 1 to 2 cards with V and then go 4 or 5 chain links wide and just get a ton of value out of it.
Yeah, you can kind of do your Phi cosplay and be like, all right, +1 this turn, 4, 4, 4, 4.
Yeah, it's like you're spreading flames essentially.
Exactly.
Yeah. Maybe not chargers, but related to them are the bannerets. So these are new-ish from Dusk Till Dawn. We're playing 2 sets, the ones that make courage and the ones that give quickens. We kind of talked about how courage is just good value and gives your stuff like pseudo go again. You can use your Boltyn ability, and quicken lets you cheat on soul. So both of these are just really nice payoffs as well as resource cards. So usually hoping not to play it. Like sometimes a 1/4 you can like take flight and on a banneret and it's fine, but you're usually hoping to pitch or charge them. But they just give you a lot of. They're one of the ways you help get value back from charging.
It's hard to overstate how good those cards are for the deck. It's like having 6 Fableds in your deck.
Yeah, I was about to say that where you're just like getting some free value out of your pitch.
They block 3. They do things when you charge them. They're a leg tap if they have to be. They just do literally everything Boltyn wants his cards to be doing.
And you only wanted 6. You didn't want more of them.
The other ones kind of suck.
They're not great.
They're not amazing.
Okay, makes sense. Where do you want to go to next from here?
We can start talking about.
Maybe some of the power cards and the payoffs.
Yeah, it's easy to talk about the bombs.
The reasons to be in the deck.
Yeah, the reasons to play Boltyn.
Because like a lot of this is just like some value.
Yeah, it's sort of like
Mid-range.
it's sort of like how you get your soul going and play turn to turn, but it enables some of the more powerful things. So the biggest one obviously is Lumina Ascension.
The classic.
Card's fantastic. Lets you swing Raiden multiple times or lets you Sabers combo. Often you're sort of trying to get to 2 soul so that you can play a Lumina Ascension, and then the Lumina Ascension gets you more soul and you kind of can keep your soul rolling, so it's often kind of like chaining those together.
And in Raiden, you kind of end up. It's not so much a combo piece. Obviously, sometimes you try to line it up with a V turn if you have a Spirit of Irina in play.
Then you go crazy.
Then you can just go completely sicko mode on people. But a lot of the time when you're shipping a Lumina in the Raiden deck, you're just like, this is an absurdly efficient 1-card play. I feel like Fab recently has been pretty defined by these super, super overvalue, zero cost yellow NAAs, and Lumina Ascension is one of those two. You just play this and you threaten a 10-point life swing, and your opponent is not very happy. It usually at least steals tempo and signals them to start blocking. And then
the other funny card.
Yeah. I might personally rate this card higher than Lumina Ascension in the deck, just because this is, when you draw this, it can also be a Lumina Ascension. Most notably, this card lets you convert extra cards in your soul that you don't really want into just damage and action point if the attack wasn't already over its base, and then you just get to go get pretty much whatever the hell you want, as long as it's an action card. I feel like every single time I beaconed for something that wasn't Lumina, my opponent picked it up and was like, I thought this said Tutor Lumina Ascension.
I think it was either against you or no. I even picked it up at one point. I was like, what can you target with this also? It was like...
Don't worry. Anything.
I got like attacked with a Command and Conquer or something, and I was like, this is suspicious. There's extra cards in here.
Yeah, that's like such a classic way to close the game too, is it's like almost more of a checkmate than CNC pummel when your opponent's low, is it's just like, CNC, I have like 4 cards in my soul, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah, and when you Sabers combo, this is often one of your finishers. I had a game against a Dash where I got up to 13 or 14 soul off my Sabers combo, and then I beaconed for plus 11 on I'm going to attack you for 3s at 14. Plus 11, you're dead.
The tutor
my God.
also makes it like particularly flexible in endgame situations, where it's like, part of what makes him hard to fatigue is that you bleed a lot of value. The other part is just the ever-looming threat of this card, where your opponent's like blocking around it. I had a game against Missouri this weekend where they were just constantly blocking like my soul over however much I was threatening plus Boltyn, and they were kind of like taking chip on the Raiden, but it was like grinding me down, and then you get towards the end and you can kind of use it in creative ways because it's damage and a tutor.
Yeah, I remember in our game there was like a couple points where I was like, instead of trying to block around the things, I was just trying to get you to freaking use it. I was like, I don't want to play around this nonsense anymore. Just freaking play the card already so I can stop worrying about
and then you're
it.
kind of still not happy when it's like not what you expected me to go grab. It's
Yeah.
like, what do you mean snatch?
Yeah, Snatch is a really great target for it.
Snatch, CNC.
Yeah, maybe on the topic
Cadaverous.
of your payoffs for soul is Celestials.
And also like other things that we can grab off of that. Like that's probably like a good thing to talk about. Like what else we can grab with us.
If you have a lot of soul, it's expensive because it's like 1 for this. You probably have to give go again. This costs 3. But if you have a lot of soul, you can get some crazy efficiency and just convert these for 7 go again. This can be really good into like Azalea, who often doesn't want to block your Luminas, and you wind up with a bunch of extra soul, and then maybe they put you under a sleep dart, and well, this doesn't need Boltyn's ability to get go again. So you kind of have a lot of ways to kind of just push through and have really big turns, and it can be a really nice finisher, as well as the yellow resource card, 3-block, offer into
Sometimes it's just your turn is a 1-card 7, and that's all it needed to be.
And it's nice as a resource card because it's like, well, when I see it now, it's not great, but later.
But in 8 turns, you're gonna
Hold
hurt.
on.
This card is also one of your most important ways to get over fatigue. A lot of the way you're closing games in 2 decks, like a really, really defensive Bravo deck that's on like 12 plus defense reactions, a bunch of 3-block NAAs that like will kind of annoy you, is you'll set up like Tunic, V, charge 1 or 2, and then like throw a C-Cat for 9 in there somewhere, and they're probably quite sad.
Yeah. So I guess outside of the power cards, other things that the deck is trying to do is end on some pretty powerful finishers. So we're running Cadaverous Contrabands and Command and Conquers as 2-cost finishers. CNC is great. It's especially good when it goes up to 7 if they block with attack actions. It's sort of like the Ira special.
Yeah.
And it eats through armor, which pushes through your Luminas. And then Cadaverous gets back Lumina Ascension. It's only a 2-of since it blocks 2, and you really need a Lumina. Like, there's not another good target for it.
Right.
But I think we've both had games in this weekend where, like, the most gross one is you Lumina, they block out your Lumina, and then you Cadaverous, put the Lumina back on top. And then just put them in the same spot next turn, but they've probably gone through some armor and whatnot to
I
get you
had
there.
more than one game this weekend where I just shipped like 4 or 5 Lumina Ascensions, and it's just completely over at that point.
Sheesh.
And it's kind of nice into Dromite too. You can kill a dragon with it, get a Lumina back. So
Yeah. And being a popper is just huge.
Very modal.
And then another finisher we have is Valiant Thrust. Just a 1 for 6 if you charge. Pairs nicely with a Take Flight. Often you're pitching this card, but it is another finisher that we have.
I wasn't super impressed with this card, but
Yeah.
I think it does its job as like, I have extra soul. I don't really like, like the idea of like having a spare card. I'm just gonna 6 you and move on.
And then finally, some Courageous Steel Hands. If you've charged, any attack gets +3. This includes the generics, so you can Courageous Steel Hand a CNC or
Courageous Steel Hand to snatch.
yeah, or your Raiden to push through Lumina Ascension. So really good. Also lets you turn on Boltyn's ability to give things go again, provided you charge. So another way to get out of that kind of like your opponent not wanting to interact with you.
It's like a slightly more conditional version of your favorite card, Lightning Press.
I was going to say that lightning press at home.
It's Lightning Press that blocks too. A lot of the time I like it more. Yeah, and the
Talk about the
sideboard.
So this is the core of the deck that most of the time doesn't really change. I think you mentioned just the contraband
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah,
The
into
contraband comes out
Azalea,
sometimes.
it comes out, but usually that's the core staying intact.
This is 52 cards in most matchups. I'm bringing in 58 bringing in 8 cards to make the 52-60. And like mentioned into Azalea, sometimes you'll bring in like 10, drop the Cadaverous for some more D-reacts. I just have the sideboard sorted by quantity here. There's a
Not
sixth-
quality.
Definitely not. There's a 6th Beaming Bravado in here. It's pretty unexciting. It's some matchups you want 27 chargers instead of 26. And having a little extra, just like, I ship this and I can give it go again, no questions asked, is important into matchups where they maybe have a lot of NAAs, like Dromai with her Invokes.
When are you trying to like go up on charge cards? This is like when you're going above 60 or something?
Pretty much when you just want 0 D-reacts and you just want to hit your opponent really hard.
Yeah, the deck's basically built so that you can have 60 cards that aren't D-reacts, and then if you want other cards, and then there's 8 D-reacts in equipment. So this allows you to play a board without D-reacts, but sometimes you are playing Raiden with some amount of D-reacts as well. So this kind of lets you play a clean 60 with no D-reacts in it, and it's good into like a Bravo who has a lot of equipment and doesn't need to turn on Boltyn ability. But yeah, it's sort of just like what it is.
Yeah. Next we have Yellow V for Valor. This card is like very easy to underrate on its face. It's a whole action point to develop. It blocks 2. Being yellow is okay, and then it costs 1 and a card to give something +2. It's pretty unassuming, but something it's really good at is unbreaking a hand that just doesn't have a charger, which is, also Warband's job. It's also particularly good at fighting fatigue, because pretty much as long as Tunic is up, they just have to respect that you have an onboard +2, maybe +3 if you haven't charged that turn, just whenever you want it, and it can kind of give you back the action point it took to play by giving something that wouldn't have go again.
Plus into like fatigue, it's the whole thing of like carrying forward resources into a future round where you're like, well, now I might have like a functional 6-card hand because I played this and I still have it.
Yeah.
Right.
There's also some really strong endgames with this. Like you can block down to 1 card, attack with Raiden for 0 with a Tunic up, and they just respect it coming up to 5. But if they block 5, you just get to arsenal your card and you didn't give up anything.
Yeah, my buddy, I think it was Noah, came up to being like, I just saw Yuki do that to someone. I just want to make sure you know that that's a possible play that you can do. Don't get juiced by Yuki later.
Yeah, onboard tricks are pretty good.
Juicing people with this card.
That's why I kept asking about everything when I was playing. I was like, what is it? I'm not getting juiced.
I'm not getting that. What the fuck does that say?
I'm going to read the effing card.
I adore this card. I think when we played, Michael Fang said to me, this is like my favorite card in your deck, and I actually just completely agree. I completely adore this card. It's just like hilariously overrate. It's a 1 for 4 attack reaction that spreads its value across 2 chain links and blocks 3. It's kind of just completely obscene. Especially because, unlike Steel Hand, you can just, like, convert a Tunic resource into, like, if you just go, like, 2-card hand, you don't want to charge, you want to, like, present a little extra damage instead, you can just throw an attack, and then, like, Tunic throw this, and it's still a +3, and then you just get a little extra on your next attack if you've charged as well.
Yeah, and the Courage token can be really crucial for giving things like your Bolt of Courage or your, maybe the next card, Snatch, go again. So if you can give, like, you can attack with a Bolt
Classic.
of Courage,
Yep.
Resounding Courage, bump the Bolt up to 6,
Snatch
give it
for
go
5.
again, Snatch for 5, that can now get go again, and it gets pretty out of control. So there's a lot of, like, pushing these on hits with Boltyn's ID, as well as the attack reactions and the Courage tokens to give everything go again, and that's sort of letting you chain together these on hits with Boltyn sort of like built-in pseudo evasion, I guess.
Sounds like that's another reason to be in the deck too. You get to play 9 snatches.
Yeah, and they very often have go again.
Most of the time, because your opponent's not just going to be like, oh, you have snaps up? No blocks on your snatch. Why would I do that?
The deck in a way reminds me of Lexi in that you're presenting, like, many chain links with lots of on hits. So you're kind of doing that same thing of, like, pressuring them and forcing their blocks out a lot, or just getting a ton of value if they're choosing to block.
That makes sense. I was thinking that similarly, but like with Cheerios Briar almost.
Yeah.
Where you're just like playing these pitchless, super efficient rounds with lots of on hits, and your opponent's just like, how do I deal with this nonsense?
And if they don't want to die, their armor will be gone in like 3 turns.
Yeah, one of our teammates once looked at Elly's deck and said, Elly just made Boltyn into a rune blade, and it's kind of true.
It's true.
And then the last slots are, we can talk about them all at once.
reactions.
They're just D-reacts. These are coming in the Raiden plan into Azalea and Bravo and probably Azuri as well.
Yeah, I don't like the soul shields as much into Azuri.
But the 0 costs are great.
The 0 costs are great. It's just giving 2 cards to Uzuri, even if it's on an isolate, is kind of exactly what she wants you to do, and you can end up getting juiced by flick knives. So it's usually better to, like, go card 4 cost react, because that insulates you from the flick and nerf scalpel play.
Don't laugh, react, it might help.
Can you not?
Where do you guys want to talk to you?
Love you, Sean!
I know.
Also topped. Congrats, man. Anyway.
One of the really nice things about running D-Reacts in Boltyn, compared to a lot of aggressive decks, is that you can actually just charge them away.
Yeah.
So you don't get gummed up by them in the same way that other decks do. And I was finding into Bravo, especially, like when if you're running Crown of Providence, getting to Arsenal one and just go, oh, you just want to swing a hammer? I'm going to ship this D-React for a 5-card hand and, like, do a big Lumina combo on you or something like that.
Yeah.
So the D-Reacts are actually, like, pretty flexible in Boltyn, and you kind of want them anyways for Bravo and Azalea, and then
They also let you play the Sabers combo.
Yeah.
Especially Soul Shield. That's where Soul Shield is kind of at its strongest, is it lets you turn 2 cards into 6 block on Dominate, as well as advance your soul. That card's just kind of ridiculous. It's the exact same rate as Staunch Response, minus the modality, and it progresses your main game plan of getting 4 or 5 in soul and just popping off and killing them.
Yeah, soul's super important. So, like, it's like spending a full card on an Ash. It's like spending a full card in soul. Like, getting that is super integral to your game plan.
Exactly.
Yeah, because usually once you get up to, like, the 3-4 soul range, you can really kind of
It's pretty
go
out of control.
super wide with all your snatches and everything and go crazy.
So that's the deck list? That's everything?
Yeah, pretty much. That's all the cards, at least.
Anything that you guys think you would have changed after this weekend? Were you pretty happy with the list? You mentioned, like, a couple cards that you're like, oh, this was underperformer for me.
Yeah, I think if given enough time, I could probably find something I like more than yellow Valiant Thrust, but it's kind of close.
Yeah. I think overall it's pretty good. It's a matter of, like, what you want to be able to beat. The deck is pretty tight if you are playing the Sabers package. You could maybe consider dropping it, but we were expecting, like, quite a bit of Katsu, for example, and it's really instrumental in that matchup. It's quite good into, like, Boost Dash as well, if you know they're on Boost Dash.
Yeah. That is, like, a slightly sketchy thing, like, matchup-wise, is, like, you have to know they're on Boost Dash, because if you sit down and you present Sabers combo and they're like, I'm playing Evos and I have 9 pistol items in my deck, you're like, oh, okay, I'm scooping.
I always have to have, like, 4 different sideboard plans for Dash on my Fabrary.
Yeah.
Oh, and Sabres is really messed up in the mirror too.
That too.
I played somebody on stream at this event playing the mirror, and I had Sabres and he didn't, and he did not have a great time.
It's like how the Azalea mirror is just like super duper degen, like maybe the closest a mirror can be to how well did you draw. The Boltyn mirror, if both players have the Sabres package in, is like similarly disgusting. It's like, I don't know, can you find 2 to 3 Luminos faster than me? We'll see.
So is it just who draws more funny cards faster?
If you're both on combo, yes.
Yeah.
If you're on combo and they're on Raiden, you're significantly favored because your D-Reacts are so good at blocking without turning on Boltyn's ability. You stop his on-hits, which is how he gets value, and then you have enough space to pivot and get your big
Also
combo.
get extra armor versus the Raiden builds because you have Courage of Blade Hold. It just like you start the game pretty far ahead.
Yeah, and they typically like won't want to block some of your early attacks because they're kind of card hungry themselves, and then you get them to the 30 range, you can combo them down, take most of their hand, and then close them out with a Celestial Cataclysm or something like that.
Makes sense. So beyond the aggro decks we were just talking about, what is this good into? Like, what are you looking to play this into? What's like the target meta that you're looking for with this? What's like your matchup spread? And I guess what did you guys play against this weekend? If you want to talk about that too.
I think something that really appealed to both me and Yuki when it comes to the deck is like, I think his matchup spread is quite flat right now. I think he has a few like incredibly favored matchups. I think Raiden into Bravado is pretty sick for you. I think combo into Katsu is pretty sweet for you. I think you get to be pretty belligerent against both ninjas in general. Like, you just kind of don't fucking care what they're doing. Lumina gets you out of kill range. I don't think I lost to a ninja all weekend across both events.
I didn't play any ninjas, but in testing it was really good.
Really?
Yeah, they just have so many 2-block attack actions that like it feels like we're playing an aggro mirror, but almost all our cards block 3. We have more armor, and they can't block because of Boltyn's ability.
Yeah, your cards block
they can't
1.
block well.
So you just bully every aggro deck in the format basically, except for like maybe Azalea.
Yeah, I think Azalea is like relatively close, but we did.
I guess not really an aggro deck. I don't know. Azalea's like a weird one to call an aggro deck. It's like so different how it operates.
The matchup is just super swingy. That's like I like my game against Levi in top 8. I think it ended like 14-2, and I think it was like still a game that was like decided by 1 or 2 decisions.
Yeah, and I lost to Brody twice actually, once in Swiss, once in top 8. The Swiss game was very, very close. He had a timely Deadeye that just kind of shut down my turn and got him back in the game, and then the top 8 game was not especially close, but it's often like if they find a lot of red in the ledgers and codexes, they get very far ahead. If you can Lumina them down, you can get pretty ahead. It depends how your D-Reacts line up with their dominate turns, so it's a little swingy. I think it's probably a bit Azalea favorite, but it's not terrible.
Yeah. It reminds me a lot of his Draw My matchup, which I would probably call those 2 his hardest matchups in the meta right now, and I think they're pretty close to even.
His being Boltyn's?
Yeah.
Okay.
Boltyn's. They're pretty close to even, both Draw My and Azalea, but both of them are kind of defined by this, like, you just have to play every single turn cycle correctly. Like, if you make any mistakes, you start to fall behind, and you will die.
So it's like they're hard but playable. Like there's a lot of game to be played. There's not just like I'm a dog to this or something.
Yeah, there's like certain things like Dromai can have very good tome turns early. Rake the Embers is really, really good. So there's a lot of things that can go wrong in the Dromai matchup, but we do get to play 8 poppers. We have a lot of on-hits, especially with Dromai decks going more redline and playing more of the 2-cost attack or 2-block attack actions. You kind of
can't block for shit.
Yeah, you just have room to just like sometimes they just die. Like you can hit them very hard, and that's kind of your plan is to race them down. Poppers keep you afloat. You can clear dragons in a pinch with Raiden, but you're mostly not hoping to interact too much.
Yeah.
Any other matchups we're talking about? You kind of covered fatigue a bit. You like the fatigue matchups like Azuri, sometimes Guardian.
Yeah, they just can't block anything you do very profitably, especially Azuri. Bravo, there's some decks that are on just like a billion D-Reacts, and they've got like the full like Showtime imposing visage kind of situation and like Terra Sunder, where they can just actually like go most of the game without turning on your hero ability, which is why you have attack reactions and stuff, both for killing fatigue and for keeping your turn moving. Uzuri is like real bad for her. Basically, all of her 3 blocks are attack actions. So she's either turning on your hero ability or bleeding value or doing both. It's pretty hard for her to get ahead just by doing what she wants to do of like give you 2 cards, try and take cards from you.
Yeah, and the way that Boltyn's playing, where you're building up soul and then like playing to these big pop-off turns, is like naturally what you want to be doing against fatigue anyways. And you reach these end games where it's like, I have 8 soul, I'm gonna present you with like, I don't know, 2 snatches with a beacon to push it over, then I'm gonna illuminate you, and like you're gonna have a bad time. So there's a lot of ways to just push 20 plus damage with Boltyn's ability, giving things +1 when they block with attack actions, and it's just very hard you can't really block it out.
And then I guess last one really makes sense to talk about Pheano. Kind of talked about it very briefly. How'd you feel about that matchup? Doesn't sound like it was good for you.
Without Halo, it is not good.
Don't do that.
How was it for you with the Halo?
So I played a Pheano. I think Halo is just super transformative in that matchup. I played a Pheano, a buddy of ours, Victor, where I think it was like turn 4 or 5. My equipment loadout was, Halo snaps, no rune, courage, and I just went like attack, charge, snaps it, courage, and just like drop 2 Luminas on the table with like Spell Void 1 and a card in hand, and he just like looks at his hand for a solid 30 seconds and just goes, "You got it." It's pretty crazy how much Halo, and if you want to bring in something like Radiant Flow, I think is the name of the legs.
Yeah, I think Noah almost played that and then decided not to, and then got bodied by like 2 Pheanos. He's like,
yeah,
1 sideboard slot cost me topping.
Yeah, it makes them really, really, really sad. It just makes the game really hard for them.
Yeah, it's tough because you need to like ramp up your soul to get going, and all of his cards block 3 and don't turn on your hero ability. So it's just like, even though he has 30 life, you don't kill him that quickly, and you don't have that much pitch either. So it's not that hard for him to fish for his combo if you don't have enough dedicated sideboard.
Yeah.
So it sounds like overall pretty good matchup spread. You got one bad matchup, it sounds like, and then 2 hard but playable matchups.
Yeah.
So it sounds like a solid deck for people to pick up and learn, maybe.
Yeah,
I hope so.
Why I decided to bring it, actually. Elly was really high in the deck, and I was helping her play test, and I was like, nothing feels good into this deck, really. I didn't try Pheano into it, but like nothing felt like super good into the deck. I was like, it's good into pretty much everything going on.
Yeah.
Especially if people, this weekend, I think people weren't prepared for it, so it was a great choice. But I think even when they are, there's just so many tricks and so much to play around that you kind of can't play around at all.
I definitely see him, personal bias because I like him a lot, but I think it's quite likely you start to see him like pretty regularly top events. I feel like he just does a lot of fundamentally unfair things, which is both attractive as like a playstyle thing and attractive as a power level thing. I think his text box is maybe one of the most obscene in the entire game. It's just like...
It's one of the last, like, the new card design where they're like, we're not going to staple go again to things anymore.
Yeah.
It's one of the last.
Yeah, like you do have to work for it a bit, but once you have it, it is like, you do some very, very disgusting things. Like, it really does remind me of like the old Rune Blades and all of that, where you're just going super wide, tons of on hits.
Yeah, there was like something James White tweeted when people were super down on the new Dusk Till Dawn cards. He said something to the
banking action points is good.
Yeah, I've heard banking action points is I've heard banking action points is quite good in Fib. And it was kind of like, he's right. Like, just sitting there with like 5 action points or maybe 5 damage at reaction speed on the board is like, oh, this is scarier than I thought this hero was.
Any closing thoughts on the deck?
Play Boltyn.
It's a lot of fun.
If
you're on the fence, give it a shot. That's a ton of fun.
It has looked really fun. It looked like a lot of the decision making and everything was interesting and fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. It sort of has like, because you're on all yellows, you kind of have like the Dromai Icelander Prism thing where your hands are really flexible and can be played in a variety of ways. And even when we were testing or like going through games together, we often had like very different ideas about how to play the deck. So I think there's a lot of room for player expression with this deck, and you can play it super aggressive, you can play it a little bit more mid-rangey and setup-y, and yeah, it's a lot of fun. Give it a shot.
Sick. Anything you want to plug before heading out?
Shrug?
Twitter?
Oh, yeah, Twitter, I guess. Why not yours?
Okay, my Twitter is @YukiLeeBender. I also have a podcast called On the Bobble. You can find us on YouTube or Spotify or most podcasting platforms. And
I make no content, stack no paper, and my Twitter is @blossomingthing. And you can follow me there. And I like to tweet about the game. I play it a lot. I love to meet people, and I'm always trying to get better.
I'll throw those in the description below. Any chance I can get the Fabry link also later so I can throw that for people to take a look at?
Yeah, absolutely.
Check that in the description below. All right. Thanks so much for watching. I appreciate you guys.